Welcome to Game 2 of the Standard Metagame Challenge with Esper. In the first round, we defeated a black-white Doom Foretold deck, and let's see what our second opponent brings to the mix. Alright, this is a pretty solid opening hand, definitely a keep. Elspeth's Nightmare is a really versatile card. Helps us both deal with aggressive decks and get a little bit of card advantage over some of the more grindy decks. So here we can flash in the Omen of the Sea at the end of their turn. Looks like we may be playing, oh, it looks, I guess, a Azorius control deck. I was going to say maybe a mono blue deck. So this does give them a chance to absorb it, which is not the end of the world, because then we can resolve our Elspeth's Nightmare. And we've got plenty of land, so we'll send those to the bottom. They may have an Omen of the Sea of their own, although they would have played that the previous turn. It does seem like they do have counter magic, so knowing that, I think we want to have them waste their mana here and play our Omen of the Sea on their turn. And we are going to take that opportunity to resolve our Omen of the Sea and get rid of these lands. We've seen a lot so far.
I know my responsibility. This might be a bad idea.
So, the Fairy doesn't do a whole lot against our deck. I think here it makes sense to play the Golden Egg and play a tapped Godless Shrine. Our life total is not really under much pressure, so there's no need to wrath right now.
Let's try this.
If we can resolve Ashiok, that can put some pressure on our opponent. It does seem still like they have some counter magic up. We don't have many other options. I think we're going to grab an island and try to resolve the Ashiok. And if we keep making our land drops, that is another way to gain some sort of advantage against our opponent's deck. They are threatening to get the Fairy into a range where they can bounce and start taking up again. Here we can wipe the board. And put the egg into our yard, because we are starting to get into range where dance is an option. We'll do that on the end of their turn.
Don't worry, I got this.
And now we need to start getting into 2 spell a turn range. Unfortunately, we only have 1 enchantment in the yard. If they counter this, we can look to get both of them back next turn. And actually, we can sack the Omen of the Sea as well. So the big card in this matchup is Dream Trawler. The Doom Foretold can actually deal with it pretty cleanly. So we do have answers if they are able to resolve it, but next turn that could get online for our opponent. I'm just going to go ahead and sack this now so I can pass through their turn. We don't need another Wrath. And the fact that Golden Egg both draws a card and is fodder for Doom Foretold, I think makes it worth keeping on top.
Trust me, I have a plan.
Alright, let's see what they're up to. Well, none of this really matters to us. I think we'll just grab one of their time wipes. So we can buy back Omen of the Sea and Golden Egg here. And we can make them into creatures, although they will get time wiped next turn. I think drawing a card makes sense. Treacherous Blessing is exactly what we're looking for against the control deck. This card is really underrated. Draw 3 for 3 is incredible, and in the Doom Foretold deck, the downside is virtually non-existent. And I think here we can Oath of Kaya. Debating taking out the Brazen Borrower or lowering Teferi so they can't bounce draw. I think it does make sense to take out the Brazen Borrower while we can. We really just want to find Doom Foretold here. If we can land a Doom Foretold, we'll be in pretty good shape. So I'm guessing they're going to draw a bunch of cards with Gadwick here. And the nice thing about this deck is it can really keep up with the card advantage generated by a card like Gadwick or some of the other big control cards. Alright, so they're going to draw 3 as well. There is the Doom Foretold. So we can draw first just to see what we hit. And it seems like they may have Mystical Disputes in their deck, but that's not going to do anything against Doom Foretold. We need to keep that in mind when we look to play Dance of the Manse, though. Go ahead and play our Doom Foretold. They can bounce it with Teferi after giving up Gadwick, that is. And actually, if I haven't yet played a land, we can take out Gadwick, forcing their Teferi to be sacrificed. I'm not sure if I have, so we'll find out in a second. Alright, good news. We can make the play that will clear their board entirely. And combined with Dance of the Manse, Doom Foretold should help us turn the corner. Again, even Dream Trawler is vulnerable to Dance. Go ahead and sacrifice the Treacherous Blessing. See what we've got going on. Fairy is really strong. We could try to Dance of the Manse this turn. I think it's much better to try and land to Fairy after our Doom Foretold gets sacrificed to buy that back with everything else. They played a Chemist's Insight. They've got a lot of cards, but not a lot of action on the board. If we can resolve Teferi and guarantee our Dance hits, we'll be in really good shape. Ooh, Planar Cleansing is an interesting one, but unfortunately that is going to backfire heavily. So we're not really worried about our life total. We'll probably shock. If we play Teferi, we'll have enough to dance for the 7. Got 5 for 6 exactly. Right? Yeah. Grab our golden egg. Treacherous Blessing, Doom Foretold. Another golden egg, and another Moment of the Sea. So even if they're able to wipe our board again, we will be drawing a ton of cards that will put us in a pretty good spot. I'll keep another Teferi. Doom Foretold is fantastic. We don't really need the Birth of Meletus here. Alright. We'll just take Teferi up.
Here goes nothing.
And discard a Kaya's Wrath, a Godless Shrine. So we're looking for another Dance of the Manse. The more we can rebuy all of our awesome enchantments, the better. And another Doom Foretold is pretty strong as well. So they really need to clear the board here with the Time Wipe. And we can double Doom Foretold on the next turn. So one thing to do is check to see if we draw something else before, since we're gonna have that planet. Oh, this is the perfect combination of cards. We'll go ahead and take the third Doom Foretold here, and we know that we have Dance on top. And because they have no direct damage,
Done the hero thing.
go ahead and draw that. And we'll hold on. No, we'll play it out. Alright, and both of those cards are excellent as well. And we can now pitch the Oath of Kaya. We'll get that back with Dance of the Manse. So we're really starting to hit our stride here. As I mentioned, the late game is extremely powerful for this deck, and you can grind out even the big control decks. One real concern is decking ourselves. We do have only 16 cards left in our library, so I have to be a little bit careful about that as I continue to draw cards.
You'll thank me later. I've got it.
So the Treacherous Blessing at this point is totally unnecessary.
No, I am not making this up as I go.
Let's go ahead and dance for 6 here. Grabbing Oath of Kaya, Doom Foretold, Elspeth's Nightmare. Another Oath of Kaya. And the last Doom Foretold. And if our opponent counters this, we do have another dance in hand for next turn. Oh, they can't counter it actually, since we have Teferi out there. So we're in pretty good shape. It's always a pleasant surprise when you realize that your opponent can't do much. And at this point we can go right to the face, as that Teferi is really posing no threat. Go ahead to attackers. And face again. And we could go for our Teferi bounce Oath of Kaya. That does leave us vulnerable to a counterspell though, and it seems very unnecessary. So instead, we'll play out a Doom Portal. And this will clear our opponent's hand completely, give them one draw, and load up our board with some knights. Alright, and that'll do it. We take game one. I do like Mystical Dispute against the Azorius deck. Just having a really cheap counterspell can be incredibly valuable. And Kaya's Wrath seems pretty unnecessary here. Again, keeping in mind Dream Trawler, we do have some answers. We have cards like Doom Foretold that deal with it pretty cleanly. Dovin's Veto, some hard counter spells, also pretty nice. We can definitely get rid of one Birth of Meletus, probably both of them. And is there anything else we need to bring in? I actually don't see any of these other cards being necessary. So having one Birth of Meletus still in the main deck seems fine. Let's go to game two. Interesting. So they have chosen to let us play first, prioritizing card advantage and just the number of cards over any sort of tempo in this matchup. I think it's rarely correct to choose to draw in standard these days, just because you can fall behind and it can snowball really quickly. So we'll see if this works out for them, but I suspect being on the play for both of us is correct. I don't think I need this Oath of Kaya yet, but we will take another land, just keep hitting our land drops. This is actually a really interesting turn. We could try to slam Teferi, turning off any sort of counter magic. That does run into Mystical Dispute, which they almost certainly have in post board. The other option would be to simply scry, play Omen of the Sea, and then play Teferi with our own Mystical Dispute backup, which I like quite a bit. And hitting land drops in these kind of draw-go type matchups is really important, so leaving that land on top is great. And here they could potentially have Dovin's Veto to still stop our Teferi plan. And I think I just want to keep hitting our land, so those can both stay on top. We will shock here. It's sort of an interesting turn. We could play Doom Foretold. There is a good chance that gets negated or otherwise countered. We could also play Teferi with Mystical Dispute backup and bounce Omen of the Sea if it's able to land. I think both are good options. Teferi is so powerful in this matchup, it's worth trying to get it down. So anything but Dovin's Veto here. Unfortunately, they do have it. Next turn, we're going to have a similar option. We have Ashiok now. I could run Ashiok out directly. That does potentially run into a counterspell. I could also play Doom Foretold with Mystical Dispute backup, and I think that's just a better play. Gives us more of a chance of success. Gotta be careful with the auto tapper. You'll notice that it's not leaving any blue mana up, so we're gonna manually tap this one. It is a little bit of a tell, but not much we can do about that. And I think it is worth Mystical Disputing here. Even if they have a second Mystical Dispute, getting their counterspells out of their hand is really helpful. It gives us a better chance of landing a card like Ashiok later. Some really strong draws would be Treacherous Blessing. And obviously Dance of the Manse in the late game is really powerful. So here, this is exactly what I was talking about. I am going to try to get Ashiok down, and we can fight through a single counterspell as long as it's not Dovin's Veto. Oh, unfortunately, that one does get us. And generally not a good idea to fight over cards like Opt. So we're going to let that resolve. And if they try to slam Dream Trawler here, we will pick it off with Mystical Dispute. Seems like they are considering that exact play and potentially thinking against it due to our open blue mana. So here we can get our Scry value first. Oath of Kaya, not very effective. We are going to play this main phase. There's a lot of cards that we might want, like a Doom Foretold and a Teferi. Both excellent cards. This ordering is best because we can actually protect Teferi with Mystical Dispute here and then bounce one of our enchantments. This time the auto tapper allowed us to do this without giving it away. The Chemist's Insight is a really interesting one. We actually do want to fight them on this because giving them extra cards right now at this stage is really damaging. So we're going to counter that, land our Teferi, bounce our Omen of the Sea.
I'll protect you.
And now we're in a pretty good spot. If we can land this Doom Foretold and then potentially find a Dance of the Man, we can really get going. Wow, it's like I was calling what cards were coming up next. I think it makes sense to Omen and then Doom Foretold here. Next turn, looking to dance. And at this point, it feels like we've got quite a few lands. We have enough to dance for 6. Just confirming that. So I'm going to put some of those on the bottom. Wow, Treacherous Blessing, phenomenal as well. I think we still want to Doom Foretold this turn, picking off one of their last 2 cards. This is actually really close. Drawing 3 cards when we know it can resolve is really, really powerful as well. I think the Doom Foretold is going to put a little bit of pressure on them. We should be able to land that Treacherous Blessing at another point this game. They find their own Teferi, they can bounce our Knight token.
I've got it.
And I think we just have to hope that one of their last 2 cards is not a counterspell. Does seem like we actually need one more land to dance for 6, which is rough. In that case, I think Elspeth conquers death. Makes sense. Get rid of their Teferi. Play our golden egg. So again, we're keeping the pressure up here. And there is finally our 8th land. And another Teferi is good, so we'll keep that on top. And once we start connecting with these Dance of the Manse cards, there's very little our opponent can do to stay in the game. We just generate overwhelming card advantage.
Might be a bad
So
idea.
another Teferi for them, kind of similar to last turn. They're going to have a hard time countering unless they have exactly Mystical Dispute. If they do, though, that really punishes our Dance of the Manse. I think probably Treacherous Blessing to draw a bunch of extra cards. And our own Teferi is very strong here.
Let's slow
And
this down.
we can finish by drawing one more card. Probably should have bounced the Treacherous Blessing first there, but we can get rid of it now.
Oh, I've done the hero thing before.
And next turn we're setting up a really big Dance of the Manse that should close them out of this game. And since they've had to spend their entire turn just to draw cards, we are in really, really strong shape. Let's get back Ashiok with extra loyalty. No reason to put a +1/+1 counter on that.
To overcome your fear.
We can play a Nightmare plus Teferi.
Let's
So
try
the
this.
only card that really matters at this point would be Planar Cleansing, so I'm wondering if we can play around that. Certainly we could simply play out the Doom Foretold and keep the Dance, but I think we'll be able to draw enough action here that even if they Planar Cleanse, we can easily rebuild. So this is pretty brutal for our opponent. They're going to lose their whole board, most of their hand, and again, we're going to be drawing some additional cards as well, so we should be able to rebuild pretty easily, and there's the Dance that we need. So at this point, we basically have the game locked out, and we are looking to get to 2-0 in the Standard Metagame Challenge. And we can pitch the Birth of Meletus, as it doesn't really do anything in this matchup. So this deck has felt really powerful in our first 2 matches. Both are looking to end 2-0 and truly not all that close. So hopefully we can keep up this momentum going forward. So again, even in that worst case scenario that they Planar Cleanse here, we are able to rebuild right away. And they have just time wiped and conceded. So we are 2-0 in the Standard Metagame Challenge. Join me for the 3rd round in the next video. If you enjoyed this, throw me a like or a follow, and I'll see you then. Thanks.